Hello, this is Philosophy15. These are 15-minute philosophical conversations with, luckily enough, two philosophers, namely me, Robert Talisse.
And me, Scott Aikin.
We are collectively the authors of several books and articles, but most recently, the new edition, revised and expanded and updated of this here book, Why We Argue and How We Should, A Guide to Political Disagreement in an Age of Unreason. And also this year, Pragmatism, Pluralism, and the Nature of Philosophy. Now, for this episode, we wanted to talk about something that we, in a recent post up at 3 Quarks Daily, called Civic Enmity. And we got the inspiration, if that's the right word, for this piece because Scott had encountered and then photographed an object that was hanging out on the back bumper sticker of a car somewhere here in Nashville. And the bumper sticker said, "Trump 2020, make liberals cry again."
Oof.
How perverse is that?
Yeah, so let's kind of talk a little bit about the phenomenon and then maybe try to figure out what's wrong with it. So, right, so it looks like the categorical or you might say the practical syllogism of that bumper sticker is voting for Trump for president in 2020 will make liberals cry again. Presumably, they're crying right now because he's president. I presume that's the case, and that's reason enough to vote for Trump. And this phenomenon seems to be pretty prevalent. And again, it's easy for me, as sort of a liberal guy, to detect it on the right, directed my way. And so, for example, this fellow, is it Ross or James Dellingpole? I can't remember his first name. He writes for Breitbart, and he just loves to write essays. He loves to write essays that really are just about owning the libs. He even has a book. He wrote a book titled 100 Things to Drive Your Liberal Friends Crazy. First of all, maybe it's just liberals. Maybe it's not liberal friends. They're not your friends if you do things to drive, with the intention of driving them crazy.
Well, maybe they're not your friends if they're liberals either.
Yeah, that's true. So, but the point is that he wrote a book just about things that you can do to just drive people that you disagree with politically crazy. Another phenomenon, the coal rolling phenomenon. You have a truck, often a diesel truck, that you can change its exhaust system to allow you to be able to build up exhaust and to blow the exhaust from your diesel truck into the windshields of Priuses. And so there are special things that you can do to your truck to make it sort of blow exhaust into the windshields of cars, and they'll do that especially to Priuses. Owning the libs. And look, I think that there are lots of cases where folks have done this on the left too. I think a little bit, again, part of it is just the fact that it's easier, it's a little bit more available to me as a liberal to find me getting to be the target of it. But it seems to happen plenty on the side of the left. So, for example, folks who troll the Twitter feeds of celebrities of the right, the whole notion of the way that we talk about political exchanges or argumentative exchanges between people, again, we call it owning or schooling or thrashed them or something like that. We talk about it as a kind of
torch them,
right? That the way that we even talk about, you might say, a critical exchange between people is that it's a kind of bare knuckle, all-out brawl, right? And that there's some sort of violence that gets enacted in these sorts of things. And in fact, folks want that. So it really seems to be driven by these sort of really negative affective states that we have whenever we think about what folks on the other side do and what they like. That it just feels like hate, and that in fact that seems to be some of the ways that these actions seem to get driven. And so And notice, by the way, that phenomenon of trolling, just feeling some sort of satisfaction in getting somebody's goat, looks like that's a vice, isn't it? It's a vice to feel. You might say like it's a vice. It's a bad thing to feel good at harming somebody. Right? It should. It seems like that's a vice, at feeling good about doing something that makes somebody, even if you disagree with them, making them feel bad. That's like, again, allowing someone to feel some shame might be something that's in some ways a progress, but you shouldn't feel good about that. You should say something like, "Look, that's in some ways I don't like shaming people. It's just something that has to happen."
Right. So I think we might make some progress in thinking through what's behind this phenomenon.
Right.
We think about the bumper sticker again. So part of how that bumper sticker works is it's a trade on a more familiar slogan.
Right.
So it's a play or a variant or a mutant, right, with respect to it's a variation on Make America Great Again. So vote for Trump 2020 to make liberals cry again. Now, I assume that part of what we might call the semiotics of that performance, right, is to communicate the thought that liberals crying is one of the
It's like
constituents.
A byproduct? Yeah.
It's one of the constituents even of make. It's how you make America great again is in part by disempowering the liberals.
So I think that there's a strong and a weak interpretation of this.
Good. Go for it.
So the strong one is that it's a constitutive element, that there's a group of folks that that has to cry, right? The other one is that it's a sort of a byproduct of it. You say, look, we make America great again. These folks, unfortunately, because of who they are going to be upset, right? So you say, like, look, it's not a constitutive element. It's just like if the liberals weren't crying, but we made America great again, that would be fine, right? And so the same thing could go with like so many of these things, where it's like you have there's another phenomenon, right, where the Confederate flag shirts. Right?
Burn this one, asshole.
Yeah.
Or the American flag shirt.
Yeah. But there was one where they're selling a Confederate flag shirt, and it just said, because it said you can't. Because you said I can't. Like, you bought a shirt because I said you can't?
So that's conceding a lot of power to me, folks.
Yeah. Don't wear uncomfortable underwear. So I think that there's a strong and a weak interpretation of that, right? Where you've got an end, and then there might be some sort of other contingent byproducts. The strong one is that part of this is the objective of making them cry.
Yeah, but maybe there's a position that's in between the. So I agree that there are different grades in which this kind of maneuver can be enacted, but. I take it, though, that the make liberals cry again is at least riding piggyback on the thought that liberals are out to ruin America.
Right. So both interpretations have got liberals as being somebody who will be made unhappy by this consequence, right? And so the question is whether or not the objective is it's like whether or not the objective is make them cry, and that's just part of the package, or you'd say, look, we're going to make America great again, and them crying is just a byproduct. But the lesson is liberals crying is evidence of the fact that you're doing the right thing. Right.
And maybe, so I guess I'm inclined to a stronger it's not merely a byproduct.
Right. But that's the enmity view. Right.
Yeah, the putting the liberals down is at least part of, maybe not as strong as constitutive, but it's at least an element of making America great again. I mean, there's a deeply Hegelian thought about this, that, you mean making America great again requires that there be people who are made to cry.
Right.
right? That it's
yeah.
part of the story of the progress towards making America great. It's not making America better than it ever was, by the way.
Right. Yeah, it's not improving.
It's not right? It's making America great again, and part of that story is suppressing a degenerative, anti-American, or at least anti-America is great force that is within America.
Right.
Now that's the worry. So, and maybe you get it on either construal, right? So one of the things that it's on any view of these matters, part of what democracy is a commitment to the thought that within a certain range of reasonable disagreement, which despite we've said it's within a range of reasonable disagreement, still very severe disagreements, right? We're not saying that they're just sort of disagreements that don't matter by saying that they fall within a range of the reasonable. Within a certain range of disagreements, my political opponents, despite their error of political judgment, are nonetheless not merely my political equals, but entitled to political equality.
That's right. They're not just de facto equals; they're de jure equals.
That's exactly right.
They should be right.
Right.
It's not just they happen to be because of the fact that they have guns too.
Right. Or that the Constitution says it, but
the Constitution.
Right. But it's that my fellow citizens, qua fellow citizen, are entitled to political equality, despite the fact that large numbers of them must look to me badly mistaken about what's good for the country, distorted in their thoughts about what justice is about, in error with respect to their conception of what freedom and dignity and autonomy are all about.
And maybe even dangers to themselves and others.
Maybe even dangers to themselves and others within certain constraints. Which are pretty wide.
Right.
So it looks as if democracy requires a kind of, let's just call it necessarily conflicted stance.
Right.
I have to see people as deserving of equal political power, who I also see as on the side, within an acceptable range, on the side of injustice.
Maybe is democracy maybe too conflicted a thought to think for us to maintain? Or is it that something that you can sort of hop between, right? Where it's like, when I'm sitting in my study, I'll be like, like those guys are just nothing but evil. And then whenever I was like, okay, but I have to put on my democracy hat now. Is that a way that you can do it, where you compartmentalize them?
I don't know. It's so the easy answer is you say, well, part of democracy is sort of like a political correlate to epistemic fallibilism, right?
Great.
Part of what democracy is well, I think that they're wrong, but hey, they might have.
Then that's just dialing down how committed you are to just how evil they are. Right?
That's
it's just like, hey, calm down over there. You could be wrong about this.
That's right. That's right.
Like, well, I mean, that just says like, look, then look. I'm in some ways I'm okay with that, because I think that one of the best arguments for certain kinds of liberal democracy are forms of skepticism. Right? It's like, look, but that would be an insane. Like I'm committed to republicanism because I'm a kind of a quasi skeptic, but I don't think that I think that most folks would say that is not a good way to build to build liberalism. But that may just but that may be a way to moderate it. But that's just, you might say, just dialing things down because of the fact that you've got a certain kind of modest epistemology,
and it does result in the worry that liberals can't take their own side in an argument. The liberal Democrats have to always be like, well, maybe the Nazis got something right, and certainly, that would be an example of a view that falls outside of the range of reasonable disputes. But there are lots of views that I would even say are abhorrent which nonetheless fall within that range.
Yep.
And I think that the advocates of those views are in fact on the wrong side of justice, on the wrong side of freedom, on the wrong side of equality, on the wrong side of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And hopefully on the wrong side of history, too.
Hopefully on the wrong side of history, too.
But
But nonetheless, they're entitled to citizenship. Given all of their flaws, that I have to really assess them as manifesting, what possibly could be the grounds on which I recognize their entitlement to an equal political say? That's the trouble. That's the twisted, by twisted I just mean convoluted, double thinking kind of commitment that liberal democracy requires of us. And it's hard to see how to sustain it.
Maybe by doing something else?
Well,
That's another one.
Philosophy 15, folks. See you next time.